Before we move on to the next subject, which is Street Fighter, I wanted to let you guys know that you can check out this podcast on YouTube. SaltyNerdVideo.com takes you straight to our YouTube channel. You can like, subscribe. We have all of our content there, our full episodes, 2-3 hours long. And what we do is we split those things up in nice, digestible segments based off of subject of the podcast for your listening pleasure. So it doesn't take you 2 hours. So if you just want to listen to a little bit or half an episode or whatever, it's right there. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you want to listen to, and we would look forward to interacting with you online. That's saltynerdvideo.com, takes you straight to our YouTube channel. Whose freaking idea was it to watch this movie?
It was
mine. Okay, look.
Wait, you got the double dip this week?
I did. Yeah.
So it was also his idea.
That never happens again.
I forgot we were supposed to watch Street Fighter, and I watched half of Double Impact first, and I was like, man, this is a freaking cool movie.
Isn't Double Impact a video game movie too?
I don't know.
You're thinking of Double
think so.
Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, Double Impact was when he had a twin brother and he didn't know, and they were like complete opposites. Like one was a straight-laced dude and the other dude was like some crime lord guy.
So it was a Disney movie?
It was pretty freaking cool though. Like I was into it, and it was violent, and had a cool fight scene.
Did it have boobs? Because Vader's not going to watch it if it doesn't have boobs.
I don't know.
There's no boobs in this movie either. It's very
That's why
disappointing.
you're so upset when you walked in today.
This is a freaking Cartoon Network movie. Street Fighter. We're talking about Jean-Claude Street Fighter. Matthew Kadish, set the table for us. What the hell is this stupid movie all about?
All right, so this is a movie based off of the Capcom video game Street Fighter 2, not the first Street Fighter, Street Fighter 2. And basically the story of this movie is that M. Bison is this dictator in this kind of country of Pantaloo or something like that.
Jambaloo. Or something.
Shadaloo.
Sounds very racist.
Yeah. And basically he's been developing these high-tech weapons that have allowed him to basically invade and take over all the surrounding countries. And so basically his conquest has garnered the ire of all the civilized countries who see all the war crimes he's committing. So the AN, not the UN, this is the allied nations, send in their troops to try to contain Bison's conquest. And while they're kind of like trying to keep him from conquering more of these third world countries, he's kind of partnering with this criminal element to smuggle him new weapons and technology so that he can eventually, take over the world. And he has this vision of, he calls it Bisonopolis, which is the perfect city. And basically he's going to control the entire world and force them to have peace by being a dictator. And Jean-Claude Van Damme plays the character of Guile, Colonel Guile, who is the head of the AN troops. And he teams up with these street fighters to try to infiltrate Bison's secret lair, find out where he is, and then assault the lair, and take him out once and for all. And then you basically have this final climactic battle between Bison's henchmen and the AN allied people.
God, this movie is so bad.
Kidnapped his best friend and turned him into a monster.
Yeah. Turned him into Hulk.
The funny part that
like a debunked Captain America.
I love how they were like, muscle mass is increased by 90%. And the guy came out and it was like, he didn't look any bigger. He just looked like some, like...
Yeah, I was expecting some kind of Bane
he looked like
thing out
he
of
had like
Batman.
a runner's body.
Just a
I was
bad,
like, that guy's kind of svelte.
a terrible red wig. Like this skinny dude comes out.
His nostrils were a little bit flared.
He
but
had like a Klingon forehead.
Well, it was funny because the actor who played Blanca, which is the character you're talking about, he only was used for close-ups, so he had to get like 3 hours of like makeup and prosthetics and stuff, and then they just used his stunt double for like the long shots and stuff for doing like all like the physical activity, and he was just like, so why did I go through 4 hours of makeup for like 2 seconds of screen time?
That's ridiculous. I have nothing to say about this movie.
Dude,
it was terrible.
I was shocked at how many actual fairly good actors are in this movie.
Oh yeah, people got their start with this movie.
No, or their end.
And Raul
Julia, this is his last movie.
Yeah.
Who's that? The bad guy?
Yeah, he was Bison.
Okay.
He was also in the Addams Family movies.
So this was 94 and Hard Target was I think 93 actually.
Okay.
Oh wow, they came out that close together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was Jean-Claude thinking?
I was thinking I need money for my coke habit.
He was
Is
thinking,
that all this is?
He was thinking he was going to get $8 million, which was the biggest payday of his career at that point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like he had just come off of
I'd do Street Fighter for $8 million.
Yeah.
he had just come off of Time
Would you
Cop.
go blonde for $8
Oh,
million?
yeah, for sure. Dime me up.
So he had just come up off of Time Cop, which was his highest grossing movie in ever, basically. It made over $100 million at the box office. And so he was like really like the big in-demand action star in Hollywood at this point in time. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this movie is because the actual behind-the-scenes making of this movie was so much more interesting than the actual movie itself.
Good, because the actual movie was not
It
interesting.
was terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But like,
So boring.
if you know everything that like went into the making of this movie, like it becomes so much more of an interesting film to watch. Because so first of all,
Well, hold on. Before we get super deep into it, let's go around the table and get our general thoughts on the movie. I was watching this and I was like, this is like a bad kids movie, like Air Bud level bad.
Yeah.
And I could not for the life of me understand why any of these actors would sign up for this movie.
Yeah. So both
And-
movies, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And both movies that we're talking about today are not good movies. However, the difference is that Hard Target is like that awesomely bad, and this is just bad.
Yeah,
it's just
not
a bad
fun.
movie.
I think you texted me. You were like, "I want my $3 back for the rental fee." It was like, good Lord.
I was kind of annoyed that some of these actors would actually be in this movie. Wes Studi, he's great. He played the eye patch guy.
Oh, okay.
Sagat.
2 years earlier, he was Magua in Last of the Mohicans. Great, fantastic character.
Kylie Minogue.
Yeah.
Kylie Minogue is in it.
This is like Oscar level movies that these people are in, and he's doing
Win.
this piece of shit. I couldn't understand it.
Yeah,
But
there's got to be something. I mean, I'm sure Kay's just going to fill us in.
Well,
Yeah.
Like what drew people into
I
this
think
movie.
originally it was set to be like this big blockbuster movie, and it was just a total flop.
It looked like
It wasn't a flop,
episode.
though.
What time?
It wasn't?
No, it was it rivaled Time Cop's box office drop.
When did
It was a budget of $30 million and it made over $100 million.
Oh,
at the
that
box
explains
office.
why everything looks so crappy.
Yeah, and when did Mortal Kombat come out?
It came out the same year.
Was it so they were competing with Mortal Kombat then?
Basically, Jean-Claude Van Damme was offered the role of Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, and
Yeah.
he turned it down to do this movie.
Because Mortal Kombat, as bad as it is, it's 10 times better than this movie. I thought,
I don't think
it's
I've
just
ever seen Mortal Kombat movie.
it's terrible.
It was a lot more
But it's
faithful to
fun.
the source material.
Yeah. There's actual,
This
fighting. in it.
It's so badly campy.
Oh my God, yeah. It felt like a Power Rangers episode.
Yeah.
It looked like a Power Rangers episode.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
The
Power
sets-
Rangers is better.
The sets and the costumes, they look so like cosplay,
Yeah.
not good cosplay either.
Yeah.
Power Rangers is way better choreographed than this. It's just this looked like
There's a reason
trash.
for that, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, fill us in, man.
Fill us in, man. What
Don't hold
happened?
back.
What happened to this movie? Why is it so bad? And
so
how
much.
did they get so many people
And could it have been better?
to get into it? Yeah, could it have been
It
better?
definitely could have been better. So first of all, you have to realize that so the guy who was the writer and director of this, his name was Stephen S. D'Souza, and this is a guy who's responsible for some of like the biggest 80s action movies you can think of. So like he wrote Die Hard, he wrote 48 Hours, he wrote Commando, and this was his first directing gig. And the way it came about was that Capcom was going around shopping this out to Hollywood as like, because like their game was like super popular at the time. And so they went to Hollywood and they're like, hey, we want to make a movie version of this. And so all the studios were kind of bidding for it. And I believe Universal called up Stephen D'Souza and was like, hey, we have the Capcom guys coming in. We need to pitch them something. Can you come in and, do the pitch for us? And so he came in and he was like, okay, I'll do my pitch if you agree to let me direct this. And they were like, okay, if you can get us this deal, we'll let you direct. And so he kind of pitched the idea to Capcom where he came up with this idea that instead of doing it like kind of like a martial arts tournament thing, it was going to be more like a spy movie where you had like the evil genius M. Bison with his secret lair, and the AN guys would have to like come in and basically be like, James Bond and, fight this guy. And the Capcom guys had kind of been leaning in that direction anyway. So when they heard his pitch, they're like, we're totally on the same page. And so they decided to go with Universal for it. And being his first directing gig, Universal didn't want to put too much money into this. So like they gave him like $30 million and offered him something like, I think, like a 60-day shoot or something like that in both Thailand and Australia. And so basically, this was, Steven D'Souza's first directing gig. He also wrote the movie. And originally he was going to cast like a bunch of unknowns because Capcom wanted all 19 Street Fighter characters in the movie. And D'Souza was like people lose track of characters after 7. He's like, we can't do more than 7. And Capcom kept saying like, well, what about this character? What about this character? So he eventually got them to agree to 9. So there are like 9 main characters in this movie.
Avengers Infinity War have?
It had way more, but I mean, like you had gotten to know those characters over the course of
like 10 years. We kind of knew who these people were.
But there's a reason why 7 works because you have like the 7 Samurai, the Magnificent 7, stuff like that. Anything more than that, audiences tend to lose track of like who characters are,
especially in one movie.
So originally he wanted to cast a bunch of unknowns and train them to fight and then like go and shoot the movie. And Capcom, because they were co-financing it, they were like, we really want a big star to be in this movie. And so they decided, hey, Universal has a 4-picture deal with, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Let's get Jean-Claude Van Damme for this. And Jean-Claude Van Damme was like, well, if you want me, you're going to have to pay me. So like they decided to pay him $8 million to be in this movie.
The full budget of the movie is $30 million.
Yeah.
And he got 8? He
$8.
Almost got a third of the budget?
Yes.
God.
And then get this.
I'm trying to find out how much Kylie Minogue made for it.
and then they decide to cast Raul Julia as the bad guy, and he's like a major actor as well. So basically, I think that was like another $6 million for Raul Julia.
God.
So
$10 million to make this movie.
Yeah, basically.
Well, Kylie Minogue is like Australia's Michael Jackson. She's like the highest grossing performer of all time in Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
So basically, how she came about, because they were shooting in Australia, D'Souza was getting a lot of flack from the Australian Actors Guild for not using any Australians in his movie. And so on a flight to Australia to meet with these guys, he saw a magazine with Kylie Minogue on the cover, and he was like, she'll do. And that's how he decided to cast her, because he needed to throw a bone to the Australian Actors Guild because they were shooting there. And so like by casting her, he basically solved one of his headaches in directing this movie. Wow. But because of the casting of Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia, he had no money to hire any other actors. So he basically had to like just kind of go with what he could get.
A bunch of extras.
But a bunch of people who like either weren't well known or hadn't done like movies before. Like this was Ming-Na Wen's first movie, I believe. And also the guy who plays Balrog, the black boxer guy.
Oh God.
He was Agent Johnson from Die Hard. I don't know if you recognized him from that. The no relation.
That haircut on that dude.
Well, it was video game accurate. Yeah.
Damn.
All of their costumes were great. Haircuts, costumes, everything. Those right out of the video.
Who was the guy that his dialogue was so bad?
Well, all of their dialogue.
No. You said wasn't he originally supposed to be Jean-Claude's character? Or something?
Okay. So basically, the character of Ryu, who's like the main character from the video games.
Ryu.
He was like the Asian kind of like hero guy.
Yeah,
he's the Bruce Lee fighter.
Yeah, the Bruce Lee fighter. And when they were casting the movie, they casted this one actor, Steven D'Souza did, who was like, he spoke English very well, but he wasn't a fighter, like he's just a good actor. And you'll recognize him from other things. I forget the actor's name.
I've seen him a couple, yeah. I've seen him around.
But Capcom wanted a Japanese action star to play that role. And so they were like, we want you to cast this guy. His name was Kenya Samada. And he was basically like a really big draw in Japan, and Capcom wanted, people in Japan to come out in droves for this movie. So they're like, you have to cast him as Ryu. You have to cast him as Ryu. And Steven D'Souza's like, well, all right, cast Ryu. We got this guy. And they're like, well, you need to figure out a way to get this guy in our movie. And so he created a whole new character for him as one of the like AN like commanders or something like that. And the guy came in and he could barely speak English. And so like So like this is the guy that Capcom wanted to be headlining their movie, by the way. So he comes in for this role that was made up for him, and he knew that he lost out to this English speaking actor, so he was like really bitter about it. And if you watch the movie, all of his lines are very obviously dubbed, like overdubbed.
It's so bad.
Which guy?
And his name was like
It's like general or commander or something.
I don't remember.
yeah, the actor's name was Kenya Samada.
I checked out of this movie. I couldn't watch it.
But it's funny because the only part in the movie where he wasn't overdubbed was when he spoke something in Japanese.
Yeah.
But you know, the whole like drama behind this film was very interesting because this was at like Jean-Claude Van Damme's peak, like prima donna phase. He was basically he had a $10,000 a week cocaine habit.
God damn.
And he would show up to set coked out of his mind. And it was so bad that the studio had to hire a handler to come out and try to keep him under control. But apparently the handler was like a big partier as well. So like he just enabled Jean-Claude.
Oh my God.
Like they would go to Hong Kong for the weekend and then like they wouldn't come back on like until like late on Monday when like the shooting's already like we're scheduled to shoot on Monday, and Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back.
Wait,
that
where
night.
did they shoot?
So they shot in Thailand.
Okay.
And they shot in Australia.
Okay. So they were shooting in Thailand. They would go to Hong Kong and just like disappear for a couple of days
For the weekend, yeah.
for the weekend, and then not come back until halfway
Yeah.
through the shooting.
I'm looking
That's
at this
so
right now, right?
bananas, dude.
I'm looking on IMDb, and you can tell they didn't put a lot of effort into Mr. Sawada's character. Because number one, I watched this movie this morning. I don't remember this character. But Kenya Sawada's character in the movie is named Captain Sawada. No lie.
That's awesome. So
That's
they were
funny.
just like, make him a
Just
character.
put him in.
Just put him in.
Put him in somewhere.
Yeah, put him in somewhere. Jean-Claude Van Damme was insanely hard to work with on this movie, apparently. Like he wouldn't come out of his trailer until he was ready. He would basically, he took over like 2 penthouse suites in the hotel and had a gym built in one of them so he could go work out.
Well, he was jacked.
Well, he would say, like if he refused to come to the set, they'd be like, Jean-Claude, we need to go shoot. And he's like, no, my muscles aren't ready. And I have to pump them up.
Yeah.
My muscles aren't pumped
That's
Gotta
up.
a
get that
thing.
pump, man.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that is a
We're
thing.
here to pump you
You
up.
up. Like all those big workout guys like Schwarzenegger and The Rock, like, yeah, they work out constantly on set to make sure that they're
You gotta get
pumped for
that swole.
scene. Yeah. You gotta get swole for the
Yeah.
scene. So that's legit. But
But like he wouldn't come out of his trailer, and when they were finally able to coax him out of his trailer to come shoot, he'd bring like bottles of booze with him, and you know just be drinking on set. And they're like Jean-Claude, like for insurance purposes, we can't have you drinking on set. And he's like, F you, I'm Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So he was in full diva mode doing this.
like full diva mode. Like people like the actors hated working with him just because like he was just such a prima donna. And basically like when like Jean-Claude's antics kept putting them behind the shooting schedule. Like I think like 3 days into shooting, they were already like 10 days behind
my
schedule.
God, you know a lot about the backstory of this movie.
He
Well,
loves
it's
it.
fat.
He actually does his research.
Yeah, but this is like, I just want to talk about the movie. He's like, no, this is what happened.
Well, you can't talk about the movie unless you talk about this stuff because it had a direct impact on the film.
God, it was terrible.
And also during this time, Jean-Claude Van Damme was cheating on his third wife with Kylie Minogue.
Minogue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were very hush-hush about it and would not admit to it until many years later after he was already divorced. He finally admitted.
But this affair was happening while his third wife was pregnant with his son. And he had just married this third wife after his second divorce, and they were already having problems. So it was,
He actually married this wife twice.
yeah.
what?
Yeah, so this is his third wife. They later divorced. He married someone else and then got divorced, and then he remarried his third wife.
So so there was like a lot of this crazy stuff going on, and everyone on the cast loved Kylie Minogue. And she would do cool stuff like she rented out this bar next to like the sound stages so that it was such a stressful shoot that everyone needed a place to go and unwind. So like she just rented out this bar and she was like, hey, everyone, drinks are on me.
This movie was a stressful shoot.
Oh, you have no
Oh, I
idea.
imagine it was.
You have no idea because in addition to Jean-Claude like just being like a huge prima donna, like he was every like stereotype you see of actors behaving badly in Hollywood on this movie.
Oh my God.
Wasn't Raul Julia really sick during the filming
yeah,
too?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, excuse me.
Just wait a second, Jude.
Shut up.
Shut up.
I mean, I just wanted to say something so people know I'm still here.
Just sit over there and look pretty, okay? All right, good.
Yeah, on the podcast.
Podcast that nobody can see.
I look really nice today, you guys.
I'm 2 bottles in. I'm good. Just take it away, Kate. Sugar, go ahead.
So in addition to Jean-Claude's bad behavior, you had someone who caught like this tropical disease from like being exposed to river water in Thailand.
Oh, who was that?
It was just someone on the crew. And then like you had the line producer had like a heart attack, and like all these people were because of were like the entire cast and crew was malnourished because of the food in Thailand. It was like really bad. And it was so hot that they were like losing water weight. So like if you watch the movie, you can tell which scenes are in Thailand and which are in Australia based off of how skinny they are.
Is that why poor Blanca had no muscles?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
But like there were things that just kept delaying like the shooting of this movie. So like the big thing was Raul Julia. So unbeknownst to everyone when he was cast, he had actually been fighting stomach cancer for like, a number of months. And he had gone in for surgery, and when he kind of came out of it, he was offered the role of Street Fighter. He knew that his time was numbered, and his kids were such fans of the game. He was like, you know what, I want to do this for my kids, and so that was his impetus for taking on the role. And when he got to the set to be like fitted for his costume, he was like completely emaciated. He looked like a skeleton, because he had just come out of like chemo and he had had the stomach surgery and stuff like that. And so the costume designer called up Steven D'Souza, and she was like, we got a problem. And the original plan for this movie was that they were going to shoot all of Raul Julia's kind of like, talking scenes at the front of the schedule. And that would give them time to train the actors to do the fighting scenes for the later half of the schedule. And because of Raul Julia's like appearance, they had to wait for him to kind of like get healthier and like put on weight. And so like they had to move that to the back of the schedule, which means all the fight scenes had to be moved to the front. And none of the actors were trained in fighting except for like Jean-Claude Van Damme or like whatever. So it completely screwed up this whole plan that D'Souza had for making this movie, because he basically like had to like reshuffle his shooting schedule on the fly while he was dealing with Jean-Claude Van Damme screwing up his shooting schedule as well. And it got so bad that like the studio would be like, like you're 10 days behind schedule, you need to do something. And so he would literally just like pull a page out of the script at random and throw it away. He's like, okay, we're caught up now. he just wouldn't shoot it because he was trying to meet the schedule. And this happened so often that by the time they got into the editing bay, they realized that they were missing like a third of the movie. And they had to go back and do reshoots in order to just make the movie make sense. And one of the funniest things was that, so in order to kind of stay on schedule, they had this dual shooting system where Steven D'Souza would be working with the actors in one soundstage. And then in a opposite soundstage, they had Charlie Pisarini, I think his name is. He was the stunt coordinator and second unit director on the movie, and he was the guy who was basically, the fight coordinator. He was the one who was supposed to be training these guys, the actors, to do stuff, and he was shooting all the action scenes on the sister soundstage. And when Steven D'Souza would sit down and watch the dailies from the second unit that Pisarini was shooting, he was like, everyone's fighting the same way. Like none of the characters are fighting in a different style. Everyone's fight style is just the same. And so he went to Pisarini. He's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, what? and he's like, each one of these characters has to have their unique fighting style. And Pisarini pulls an Alex, and he's like, well, that's not realistic.
It's the video game.
He's like, no one would actually fight that way. Like, if you're fighting, like, this is how you fight. And D'Souza's like, this is a fucking video game movie, man. and so the director and the second unit director almost came to blows over the fact that the second unit director didn't want to teach the guys how to do unique fighting styles. And so like D'Souza had to go back and reshoot all like the fight scenes to incorporate like the character's signature moves, because that was something Capcom, which was a co-financer on the film, like required. Like, it's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it's like
it makes
you
sense.
have
It's
to
their
have that.
product.
Yeah.
No wonder Van Damme didn't want to play.
Dude, this
I get it.
like hearing all this behind the scenes drama, and then seeing the end result. It's like, what? Why? It's way too much effort for what you actually got. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, just call it quits. Pull the plug.
And it's funny, the actor who played Ryu, I forget the guy's name, but like, you know, the day he was supposed to have that pit fight with Vega, so he shows up on set, he's having dinner at the craft services, or breakfast at the craft service table or whatever, and you know, the PA comes up to him and
Byron Mann.
yeah,
is his name.
so he's like, Mr. Mann, are you ready for your knife fight? And he's like, wait, what? It's like, no one had ever trained him on this. And so like they put him in this pit fight and they give him a real knife.
What?
Yeah, that knife that he was like spinning around himself, that was real. That was not a dull blade. So like he went to one of the stunt guys and he was like, show me how to use this and not kill myself. and so like the guy just did like some like twirls for him, and then he just tried his best to mimic that.
Oh my God.
In the actual movie. And he was like, I could have literally killed someone.
That is insane.
But like that's how chaotic this movie was. It was just like the whole thing was just like one huge clusterfuck from beginning to end.
Oh my God,
And-
man. It's so sad. It's so sad because
Yeah.
the end of the movie's terrible. So it's like all this effort was just for nothing.
And it was funny because like you guys remember that like the part where Jean-Claude Van Damme's character like flies out of that the Blanca chamber and you know, delivers that flying kick to Bison. So like when they did that, so Jean-Claude Van Damme was so coked out of his mind that you know, like they could only like, it took a long time to set up that thing because like, you know, you had all these moving parts, you had steam, you had all this stuff. So Jean-Claude Van Damme comes flying out, and he has a line, and so like he flies out, he says his line, then he's like cut, and everyone's like, what the fuck? Why are you cutting? And he's like, I said the wrong word in my line. He thought he said one thing, but he actually said another. And D'Souza's like, no, Jean-Claude, you said the right line. And Jean-Claude's like, no, I didn't. I said this instead. And so they're like, well, fuck. Okay, well, you know, he ruined the take, so we gotta go back and redo it. So they went back and redid it. And while they were like setting up, D'Souza like went back and looked at the dailies, and it turns out Jean-Claude Van Damme said the line right. And he was just so coked out of his mind that he thought he said it wrong. And so like, and so he's like, oh, okay, well, you know, we'll just have to do a second take. So they do the second take, and Jean-Claude Van Damme comes flying out. And then he says the line wrong, like he thought he did in the first one. And he was like, nailed it. D'Souza's like, oh my God.
It makes me sad. This whole it's starting to depress me a little bit just hearing about how terrible the behind the scenes movie was.
Yeah.
Like, God.
Yeah, I
Can you
guess I
imagine working on
understand more now why it's so phoned in.
Yeah, and so
It hurts.
And so here's another thing, which is why this movie is so bad.
Another reason.
Another reason.
Is this why you have 2 pages of notes,
Yeah.
front and back?
So here's an interesting bit. So basically, they were shooting this movie. They needed to get a PG-13 rating, and the very first cut of it, they got an R. And
Wait, why?
because around this time, I think
Was he doing coke on screen?
no.
I can't think of anything that would. This is like a PG movie.
Well, let me finish my story, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just let him talk.
Just let him talk.
So around this time, I think there had been like a school shooting or something like that. So the MPAA was like kind of like going hard against like all types of violence. So
Sounds familiar.
they were like, well, the movie can't be R-rated. So like they went back and they like started like re-editing it. And they submitted it a couple more times, and it kept coming back R. And
God, who was the person who had to watch this movie over and over again?
someone at the MPAA. So finally, D'Souza just takes like a knife to this thing and just like cuts the shit out of it. And he submits it to the MPAA, and he's like, okay, there's no way they're not going to give me a PG-13 off this. So they come back and they're like, congratulations, we're giving you a G rating. And D'Souza's like, what? No teenager is going to go see a G-rated movie. And so he had to go back and basically he didn't have any budget left, any money left to redo it. So like he got Jean-Claude Van Damme to come in and say the word shit and just like put it in the movie. And they're like, okay, you get a PG-13.
Oh my God.
So like one shit gave them the rating that they
What the
wanted.
shit you talking about?
I can't talk about this movie anymore. God, that's terrible.
But this movie ended up
You're going to talk about
What did I
He's
just
gonna
say?
force it.
this movie
You're going to listen to it.
ended up being Jean-Claude Van Damme's second highest grossing movie ever.
Wow.
I don't understand
I don't
how.
either.
People are weird, man. This is
I know I'm gonna get a bunch of hate from this. Oh, you don't like Street
Who
Fighter?
are you people that paid to see this movie other than Vader?
I rented
see
it
it.
too. I rented it.
I saw it in the
You
theater when it
did?
came out.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Were you like?
I was a huge Street Fighter fan.
Were you enthralled with it?
No, I thought it was terrible.
Okay.
Actually,
okay.
in rewatching it, I thought it was better. Like now that I'm older, it's still a bad movie, but I was like, I don't remember it being, this okay. like it was much like when I saw it in the theater, I thought it was much worse than it was when on my rewatch here.
This is the start of the video game movies, right? One of and Mortal Kombat were kind of like the beginning of that era.
I was looking at Mortal Kombat right now. Actually, it came out in '95. So
The year before
later.
was Mario Brothers.
Oh God.
Yeah, and so this was like kind of extending that string of really bad video game movies.
This is why we can't have good, nice things.
I don't remember the Mario Brothers.
You don't. Oh God, that is the worst movie I've ever seen.
Please don't make me watch
if
it.
you guys make us watch that, I quit.
It'll be for our video game
It's
episode.
so bad. It's so
This week
bad.
on the Salty Nerd Podcast, we are auditioning people to replace Vader.
They got John Leguizamo to play an Italian.
God, man.
Oh, that's vaguely familiar now.
Oh, the
Bob Hoskins.
Goombas or Goompas or whatever the frick those things are called.
They got
Goombas.
Goombas, yeah.
yeah, they got what's his name, Dennis Hopper to play King Koopa.
Yeah. I just like I it's always like that. It's always that thing that happens when a big major production blockbuster movie comes out, but it's based off a video game. It's just absolute shit.
What
And
about
it's always been that way. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head that has been a decent rendition of a video game to a movie is Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider.
who Steven S. D'Souza wrote that?
Did he really?
Yeah, the guy who wrote and directed Street Fighter wrote the.
He did a
Tomb Raider
much
movie.
better job on Tomb Raider.
He did a much better job on Die Hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Tomb Raider actually has a story attached to it.
Yeah.
Tomb Raider actually has a story attached to it.
Yeah.
So.
And that was a fun movie. Like video game movies are like cursed.
Well, how about?
And I think it's this freaking movie's fault.
I don't know if you noticed this or not, but like in the movie itself, Raul Julia's got like this little like control like chair thing
Oh,
that he
did
sits
you
in.
see the-
Vader
Did you
noticed
see
it.
the picture? I sent?
Yeah.
And it's literally the control stick for the for the Street
For the
Fighter
actual
Stick and
video
six
game.
buttons.
It's the
Yeah.
arcade thing, right?
Yeah, that's his floating hover thing. That's
Yeah.
how he controls it
Yeah,
with the
they
arcade
literally
controller.
just put that on his his control chair. And it's just like
I can't.
But I was actually surprised on the rewatch at how accurate they made a lot of these characters to their video game counterparts. Like when I first saw this movie, I wasn't too happy with the with how they translated the characters, because in the video games, Ryu and Ken are like the main characters, and they made Gaul the main character in this one. But they like in watching it again, like I noticed like, oh wow, like they actually did a really good job,
So
kind of like translating.
just a
them onto
quick
the screen.
comment on that. Their outfits are video game accurate, but it is 100% the argument against why you don't want to be 100% video game accurate.
Yeah.
You know, like when people
It
like
just
were bitching
doesn't
about the Avengers
translate
and
to the
Oh, yeah.
movie.
stuff like that. You know, well, their outfits will look stupid on the movie screen, and they're right.
yeah.
You gotta fix these things
Some
up.
artistic,
Yeah.
liberty.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like my favorite character in the my actually isn't one of the video game characters. It was,
You have a favorite character? in this
I
movie?
do.
Is it Vega?
I do.
My
no,
God.
No, it was DJ.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was M. Bison's black sidekick, who basically was like
Right.
every stereotypical black guy you could think of
Yeah.
in this movie.
He just
Where
asked-
did his boxing gloves come from?
No, that's not the guy.
Oh, it's a different guy?
No, it's
Yeah.
the guy that like you ask him a question and he's like, hell no.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's that guy.
I thought that was
And then
Don
at the
Cheadle.
end, he like steals that big thing of the Raw
Of
Julia
fake
money.
Yeah. and like I enjoyed him because like he was like one of the few like obviously humorous characters in the movie, and him and Zangief, the Russian, Zangief just, I thought was hilarious in this movie because, like at one point DJ's like they're not paying, or like they paid me a crap load of money to be loyal to this guy.
He's like, you got paid?
And he was like, you got paid?
And he's like, wait.
And then
Bison is a bad guy?
Yeah, Bison's a bad guy. And then when he's fighting E Honda, they have this scene where like they're fighting over the model of Bisonopolis, and it looks like a scene from Godzilla.
Yeah, that's right.
They had the sound effects and the roars.
So bad.
And the guy they got to play Zangief, the Russian, looked just like him from the video game, like picture perfect. Like,
Yeah, he has a strong beard game going on.
yeah, he really did. Like he was the guy who looked the most like his video game counterpart in the movie. It was incredible.
God, I can't with this movie, man. It was
right.
so bad.
Let's wrap it up.
Can we wrap it up? Can
Yeah.
we go around the table? I hate this movie. It is awful. I agree with Matt. I want my $3.99 back from Amazon. Like, please erase this movie from my memory.
I'm embarrassed that it's in my viewer history.
I am fascinated by the detailed history and backstory that you gave me over this movie. It is very fascinating, all this cool behind the scenes stuff.
And surprising how it turned out, considering all the crap it had.
Considering
to go through.
how much of an uphill battle it had, it the way it came out, whatever it is. But like, okay, so Kadish, do you love this movie?
No. God no.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give this thing like a 1 minus whatever, something around that low. What would you give this movie?
I'd probably give it a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
Wow, that's high praise. Jude, what about
Yeah,
you?
I agree with Kadish. It's a 2 or a 3 for me. Probably a 2.
Gets points for being video game accurate.
No, I don't give a shit about that. I've just seen worse movies.
It's also sad that this was Raul Julia's last movie because
Yeah.
he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
That kind of makes me bummed out because his kids, I would assume, probably love this movie because it was like, they were big fans of Street Fighter, and then their dad did this big role in that movie. They probably freaking love this movie, and that really bums me out. That's the last one, memory that they have. I'm
I
probably
like how you guys always go off on tangents when it's my turn to give us.
Go ahead, Matt Vader. What do you think about this freaking movie?
Oh, it's terrible. I'll give it like a 1.2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right.
I could literally talk about the making of this movie for hours.
I can't.
Well, you can
there's
do
just
it on
so
your
much
own
stuff.
podcast.
We're done. We're
There's so
done
much
now.
stuff to cover in this movie.
I can't talk about it anymore. I'm
Next
done.
week on the Kadish Movie Hour.